Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if smart Naruto built large harem with Tenten, Tayuya, Fuka, Konan, Mei, Samui, Part 3. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. You should give up now and escape while you can, or I will humiliate you. It is my destiny to win here today, said Neji arrogantly. Wow, you genius types always have massive egos. I can't believe the stadium can hold it, replied Naruto mockingly. You will pay for you insolence, Byakugan, said Neji, as he took up the gentle fist taijutsu style. Neji charged his opponent while Naruto simply stood there waiting for Neji to attack him with the 8 trigrams 64 palms technique. As Neji went to strike the first chakra point, Naruto channeled chakra around himself and let it burst from him all at once, sending Neji leaping back and partially shielding his eyes. Now that you've made the first move, I think it's my turn, declared Naruto, as he vanished in a burst of speed. Neji's eyes rapidly swiveled, as he frantically looked around, trying to find Naruto, but he was unable to find him. Wind release. Vacuum sword, shouted Naruto, blurring directly in front of Neji and slashing his sword out, which released many thin, yet wide, blades of wind at Neji. Neji was too close to dodge, so he quickly rotated and emitted chakra from all of his points. 8 trigrams palm rotation, shouted Neji. The crowd was rather surprised. The collection of Hyuga at seeing a branch member know their most powerful main branch techniques and the rest of the crowd at Naruto, a so-called loser, pushing the Hyuga prodigy so fast. Well, I have to admit that was a pretty good move, otherwise there was a good chance you would have been split in half, said Naruto smiling cheerfully, before adopting a serious expression. However, this isn't over yet, finished Naruto, as he started going through hand signs. Fire style. Grand Fireball Jutsu, said Naruto, unleashing a large ball of fire that barreled towards Neji. Neji didn't hesitate and made a quick substitution, saving himself from a very likely fiery death. Once the fire and smoke had cleared, a pile of ashes were all that remained in his previous location. Naruto couldn't find Neji, so he made 4 clones and sent them out to the corners of each stadium, while Naruto closed his eyes and waited. After a few moments, 4 kunai struck and dispelled all of his clones. The memories he got back from the trajectory from which they were hit told him where Neji was. Naruto disappeared again and appeared behind Neji and punched him to the ground. Neji, I truly pity you. You talk about destiny controlling everything, but you are desperately trying to fight against it, said Naruto softly, before sighing. Scoff, what would you know about destiny, you're just a loser, stated Neji arrogantly. If that's the case, then I guess you're worse than a loser, because I know much more about it than you, said Naruto, before pausing in thought. Naruto tapped a finger on his chin, showing he was thinking, before snapping his fingers. Aha, I got it. I was trying to think what you call a person who is losing to a loser. Know what I call a person who is losing to a loser? Neji, laughed Naruto. Neji angrily stood up and charged at Naruto and once again tried to use the 8 trigrams 64 palms, but due to Naruto's impressive speed, he only managed to close off 16 points on each of Naruto's arms. I have sealed the points in your arms, and you can't do jutsu anymore, you're finished. Proctor, call the match, or I will kill him, said Neji looking at Genma. Genma was about to call it before Naruto laughed. Neji turned to look at him and growled. You think that would stop me? I could open my points right now, but instead I will show you not to underestimate people by using only the skills your teammates use, taijutsu and weaponry, said Naruto, as he drew his blade slowly, allowing everyone to get a good look at it. Those more proficient with weapons realized this sword was something special and was able to conduct all types of chakra, including elemental chakra, to a very high degree. Neji scoffed and drew a kunai and charged. Neji aimed directly for Naruto's left shoulder, but Naruto parried the blade off and kicked Neji in the stomach. Neji flew back and looked up, only to see Naruto wasn't there. Instinct was the only thing that saved him as he rolled to the right, avoiding Naruto, who had dropped from the sky and slammed his sword directly where Neji's stomach was before rolling away. A 3-meter deep hole, about 1 meter wide, was left in his wake, as Naruto pulled his sword out of the ground. Naruto charged chakra and forcefully reopened his chakra points using some of the Kyuubi's chakra mixed into his. Naruto then resheathed his sword and went into the demon fox fighting style opening stance, which had him with his back leg, which was his left leg, bent in his front leg, which was his right, curved in front of him, facing to the front and left, while he had his left arm held at his side and his right arm held part way between his body and head, with his fist being directly in front of his neck, allowing him to be able to attack or defend at a moment's notice. Neji used his eyes and analyzed the stance and couldn't find any weak points. Neji was now slightly worried, as he realized his opponent must be reasonably skilled in taijutsu to have such a strong guard. Neji lowered himself into the gentle fist style and both stared each other off. Line break. Wow. Naruto is doing pretty good, don't you think, Shikamaru? Asked Choji. Sigh, so troublesome, replied Shikamaru, but he was also watching the match with a keen eye and couldn't help but wonder how and when Naruto had become so strong. Yes, it appears that Naruto has excelled rapidly since the academy and has now become someone who it would be illogical to underestimate, which it seems is what his opponent is doing. Spoke Shino, saying the greatest number of words many people ever heard him speak. Yes, it appears that Naruto is too much for Neji, do you not agree, Tenten? Commented Lee. Tenten nodded but kept her eyes on the match. Gaara stared with his normal impassive face, but inside he was excited and curious. So this is the power he spoke of. I will kill him if he cannot beat me, as it would mean he is weak just like everyone else and his power is nothing compared to mine. Thought Gaara. Line break. Let me tell you about the Hyuga clan's hatred. You and almost all of these villagers are unaware of what happens, but the Hyuga has a special mark, a curse mark, which it puts on all branch members. This mark is used to keep the branch members in line. You and everyone here have no idea what it is like to be branded with a mark that controls your life. Said Neji angrily. Naruto gave a small smile of understanding before speaking. Neji, I want you to listen to me now, you are the one who has no idea about me. You may choose not to believe it, but I have a mark that has singled me out my entire life. This mark has been the bane of my existence for almost my whole life until I changed my view. I realized that while I may be isolated and looked down upon by most others, there are a select few who do care for me. While that number may be small, it is where my vast strength grows from. If I had never had anyone, said Naruto, as his eyes drifted to Gaara in the stands, who simply stared back unflinchingly. If I never had anyone, I would have fallen into despair and darkness much like you have, and I probably would have tried to place the blame somewhere else, much as you curse destiny. The difference is I was not happy to simply fall into the darkness and descend into madness, and that is why, as hard as it is for you to believe, I am able to defy destiny, which is also why I will win here, because I make my own destiny. Finished Naruto. Neji was stewing in rage, unable to fathom Naruto's audacity to speak such things, and as such he charged with a battle cry. 8 trigrams 64 palms. Shouted Neji once he was in range. Naruto spoke as Neji approached and said to him, now let me show you how perseverance and hard work makes one capable of defying destiny. Naruto got into his stance and parried every strike Neji tried and threw 50 shuriken at Neji, 10 at a time in rapid succession, each throw 3 seconds apart. Neji used the 8 trigrams palm rotation to deflect the waves of shuriken and kept spinning as he saw Naruto charging at him. Naruto gathered chakra in his right hand and quickly formed a dense sphere of chakra and slammed it against Neji's defense. Rasengan! Cried Naruto, shocking almost every Junin and anyone who knew of the 4th Hokage's legendary technique. The chakra battle caused a horrible sound that had some people reaching to cover their ears, as both spheres of energy grinded against each other, before Naruto begun to push through. With one last push of chakra, Naruto broke through Neji's so-called ultimate defense, the discharge of which sent him flying back into the stadium wall, with his torso smashing into it hard enough to fracture the wall on impact. Neji's form slumped down like a puppet which had the strings controlling it cut, while the Hyuga also noticed breathing had become painful, feeling a few ribs fracture on impact. I failed the Genin graduation exam 3 times. I could never do the clone jutsu, said Naruto. However, I found a way around that and learnt the shadow clone jutsu instead. Don't come whining to me about this destiny stuff and telling me you can't change who you are. I did it, and you can do it too, because after all, you're not a failure like me. Finished Naruto. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki, announced Genma. Everything went silent until after a while some clapping begun, which soon increased in volume. Naruto helped Neji up as the medics came out and Naruto smiled at the crowd before walking away. Naruto Uzumaki, the boy who defies destiny, thought Neji as the medics took him away. Line break. Naruto walked up to the contestant area and received a fair bit of congratulations from Lee and Choji, a lazy thumbs up from Shikamaru before he mumbled troublesome, a wary eye from Tamari, and an intensely focused glare from Gaara. You did really well, Naruto, said Sakura. Yeah, it seems I'm really going to have to step up my training to beat you, said Haku with a small smile. Naruto, that was amazing. I don't think I've ever seen anyone beat Neji and you absolutely dominated, commented Tenten. Naruto, I will win my match and then I will fight you in the next round, said Lee excitedly. At this Naruto gave a small frown. Lee, be careful. I know you are strong and want to prove yourself but, started Naruto, before he lowered his voice slightly, his eyes momentarily darting to the side. Your opponent is very dangerous, and you need to watch yourself in this fight, finished Naruto seriously. Lee nodded in seriousness, but all the same replied, do not worry about me, Naruto, I won't lose. Naruto took a seat and got comfortable, as Lee and Gaara walked down to the center of the stadium. Lee stared at Gaara with determination and Gaara stared back impassively. Second match, Lee vs Gaara. Begin, shouted Genma. Gaara immediately took out the cork from his gourd and let his sand pool around him, while Lee raised a hand up and got into his normal stance. Lee charged and swung a kick at Gaara's head, but it was blocked by sand. Lee then tried to punch Gaara in the stomach but was once again blocked by sand. Is that it? Asked Gaara stoically. Watch this, shouted Lee. Lee then ran as fast as he could and attacked with a barrage of punches and kicks, but none penetrated the sand. Lee then looked up at Guy who flashed him a smile and thumbs up. Lee grinned and jumped up to the stadium wall and took off his weights. What? Does he think a couple of pounds are going to make him fast enough to beat Gaara? Scoffed Tamari. Naruto grinned and replied, I think you'll find a few pounds does make a difference. Naruto realized things were about to get interesting because Lee was the only one he knew, Guy aside, who could match the weight Naruto kept on him, but while they both had 500 kilograms weighing them down, Lee's were only situated around his legs, making him faster than even Naruto was, when going into his tailless from. Boom was the sound that resounded around the stadium as Lee disappeared in a flash, causing the dust clouds that had been raised to instantly split. Gaara blinked as he felt a fist impact very close to his head and turned around to see what happened, but then his eyes widened in shock when he felt a kick near his stomach impact his sand not a second later. Gaara was safe until Lee descended from above and landed a kick on his head, shocking every person from the village hidden in the sand. Line break. I am possible, that kid H hit Gaara, stammered Tamari. Naruto stared at Lee and Gaara and despite himself, couldn't help feeling excited that he would get to fight with one of them next. Gaara's face cracked, and sand fell, revealing a demonic expression, but it was quickly replaced with his stoic one. Gaara then begun to actively engage in battle and started sending his sand out to attack Lee. Lee dodged a huge hand of sand but was struck in his right ankle by a spear of sand. Lee grimaced at the gaping hole in his leg which was almost the size of his palm and proceeded to open the first gate, at which point he charged at Gaara and kicked him up into the air. He then appeared behind him and wrapped his bandages around him before shouting, "Primary Lotus." However, before they hit the ground, Lee grimaced and closed his eyes from the pain in his ankle, before slamming Gaara into the ground. Genma looked on and figured it was over but still waited. As the dust cleared, he saw a shell of sand in the shape of Gaara in a deep crater. "What? How?" asked Lee in shock, as he couldn't think of how Gaara could have escaped. There was some dark laughter coming from Lee's left, so he looked over and saw Gaara emerging from a wall of sand. "You are strong. Ha ha, you will make me feel alive," shouted Gaara, as he raised his arm and blasted a literal wave of sand at Lee. Lee was too tired to dodge after opening the first gate and was smashed into the wall and screamed in pain. After a while the sand let up and everyone could see Lee's arms and torso were bleeding heavily. As another stream of sand then came at Lee, the green-clad ninja surprised everyone when he managed to leap away and dodge it completely without too much difficulty. "It seems as though you are a more than worthy opponent, therefore, I will take this seriously. Third gate, Gate of Life, open," shouted Lee, as his skin began to turn red. Everyone assumed Lee would then attack, but many were surprised as his chakra output kept increasing before he shouted, "Fourth gate, Gate of Pain, open." Lee then disappeared in a swirl of dust before reappearing under Gaara and kicking him up. He continued to kick Gaara up and then appeared above him and punched him, then appeared under him and kicked him and continued to beat him senseless, sending the boy blasting away upon each impact. The sound of Lee's muscles tearing apart was heard by the ninja in the stadium, so Lee moved to end things. Lee then grabbed a strip of cloth which was wrapped around Gaara. Lee clenched the strip of cloth and pulled the helpless Gaara towards him, preparing his final attack. "Fifth gate, Gate of Limit, open. Reverse Lotus," shouted Lee immediately after opening the gate, seconds before Gaara was within reach. Lee wound up his fist as he gave the cloth one more harsh tug, before he punched Gaara in the torso, smashing the sand ninja into the ground, cratering it on impact. Lee collapsed on the ground shortly after that, holding his right ankle which was bleeding profusely. Gaara lay under his gourd which had turned into sand at the last minute, saving him from being knocked unconscious. Gaara raised his hand to the side and said, "Sand coffin." As sand closed around Lee's right leg and arm, Gaara prepared to clench his fist. "Sand burial," he shouted, attempting to crush Lee's trapped limbs. Genma quickly saw Lee was finished and went to intervene, but stopped as Guy had already intervened. "Why?" was all Gaara could say. "Because he is my student and precious to me," said Guy. Lee began to stand up, causing many to go wide-eyed. "No Lee, began Guy, before seeing Lee was unconscious. "Oh Lee, what have I done?" whispered Guy tearfully. "The winner of this match due to interference and from his opponent being unable to continue, is Gaara," announced Genma. There was quiet for a minute as everyone was shocked by this turn of events, before some respectful clapping began. Medics took Lee off, followed closely by Guy, as Gaara walked back up. Gaara locked eyes with Naruto, but then quickly looked away and grabbed his head in pain. "Line break. Will the next contestants please come down?" asked Genma. Shino walked down to the stadium, but Sasuke was nowhere to be found. "Line break." The Hokage stood up, ready to disqualify Sasuke, but the Kazekage spoke up. "Surely you could postpone the match. I am sure many would like to see the Uchiha fight, and many would be disappointed if you cancelled his match. Simply push it to the end and then if he doesn't show up, by all means disqualify him," suggested the Kazekage. Hiruzen had to concede that many did come to see the Uchiha fight, so he quickly told one of his guards to deliver the message to Genma. Choji immediately built up his chakra and then used his expansion jutsu. Choji then quickly tucked in his head and limbs and rolled forward looking to end the fight quickly. "Human boulder!" cried Choji, as he rolled straight at Haku. Haku stood there and calmly but quickly went through hand signs and countered with his own attack. Ice Dragon Jutsu, said Haku, the temperature in the arena dropping suddenly. As soon as Haku said this, the moisture around the ground rose up and turned into a dragon about 3 meters long and 1 meter in width. The dragon charged at Choji and at the last second, turned and swung its tail, nailing Choji and sending him into the wall. Choji's speed was slowed down considerably, even though his was still in his boulder form, but that was all Haku needed. Haku flung 12 Senbon, all of which hit Choji around the pressure points in his legs and torso. Please give up. I don't wish to harm you anymore. Your legs are numb, and your torso has been weakened enough that a few hits will knock you out, said Haku. He's right, but I can't give up right now. Not yet. If I can break through his attacks, I should be able to get to him, thought Choji. You may have a point and I probably should forfeit, but I still have one move which I think can give me the edge, said Choji heavily, his breathing now much more labored and difficult due to the pressure points in his chest having been struck. Choji pulled out ropes attached to kunai and draped them over himself. Expansion Jutsu, said Choji again, before he expanded, the kunai now being wrapped tightly around him. Spiky human boulder, said Choji, who then begun rolling towards Haku and tearing up the ground as he approached him, moving slightly slower than before, but causing much more damage to the environment. Haku once again used a dragon of ice to attack Choji, but it was quickly shattered by the spiky spinning ball of humanity. It seems I have no choice, thought Haku. Secret Jutsu, Crystal Ice Mirrors, said Haku, forming 16 mirrors around Choji. Choji tried to get out of the dome by ramming the mirrors, but they wouldn't break, with his stamina dropping after each hit. It's over. Secret Jutsu, 1,000 Needles of Death, said Haku quietly, as thousands of water needles rose up around the edges of the dome. The barrage of needles struck Choji, who had been slowed down considerably when he hit the mirrors and therefore, was knocked unconscious from all the needles. Genma walked up to Choji and checked he was unconscious, before standing back up. Choji is unconscious and unable to continue. The winner of the third match is Haku, announced Genma. The crowd applauded while Haku walked back up. Nice work, Haku, said Naruto to Haku when he had rejoined the group. Thanks, said Haku with a nod, before turning back to the center of the stadium. Line break. Will those fighting in the next match please come down? Asked Genma. Tamari jumped down and looked really fired up, prompting Shikamaru to think about if he should even fight. Sigh, maybe I should just forfeit, said Shikamaru. Shikamaru, you better go down there, because if you don't, I'll tell your mother, said Ino in a sickeningly sweet voice. You wouldn't, said Shikamaru uncertainly. Come on Shikamaru, even Choji went out there and tried his best, you could at least do the same, said Naruto. That wasn't enough motivation for Shikamaru, so Naruto gave him a little push, literally, which sent him over the bar and down to the ring. Darn troublesome blondes, muttered Shikamaru. Genma blinked before schooling his features with a small cough. Okay. The fourth match, Tamari vs Shikamaru Nara, begin, said Genma. Shikamaru lay there while Tamari charged at him. Sigh, I knew this would be troublesome, muttered Shikamaru. Shikamaru jumped to the side away from Tamari, who had just swung her fan down, causing a rather sizable indentation in the already damaged ground. Well, I might as well end this quickly, thought Shikamaru. He threw 2 shuriken at Tamari which she blew away. Really? That's all you can do? That's pathetic, mocked Tamari. Yes, I'm definitely finishing this early, thought Shikamaru. Shikamaru threw a kunai, but it wasn't aimed at Tamari. In fact, it was aimed at the wall near the crater that had been created during the previous match. Shikamaru then walked forward and made a seal before calling, Shadow Possession Jutsu. Tamari jumped back in the direction of where the crater was, thinking she had evaded the attack, until the shadow kept chasing her. She kept dodging backwards until the shadow stopped, at which point she used her fan to mark that point. So it seems you can't go any further than this point with your shadow. I guess that's bad, for you, wind scythe jutsu, said Tamari, which ended with her swinging her fan, sending a tornado of wind at Shikamaru. Shikamaru barely managed to jump behind the trees, which moments later had deep slashes carved into them by the jutsu. Time to end this, thought Shikamaru. Tamari waited for Shikamaru to emerge, knowing that getting closer was a bad idea. After about 5 minutes, a kunai was flung at the kunai already embedded in the wall behind Tamari, angling it up slightly. Shikamaru then threw 7 shuriken to distract Tamari, while he stayed behind the trees and made a makeshift parachute with his jacket and a kunai, which he then threw up in the same direction as the kunai he threw earlier. Shikamaru began to charge at Tamari, who then retreated into the crater, to keep her distance from him. Shadow possession jutsu, said Shikamaru, as his shadow began to rush at Tamari. Tamari noted the distance and was fairly confident that it wouldn't reach her, and therefore was shocked when she had to jump back to keep it from reaching her, all the while failing to realize she was quickly getting closer and closer to the wall. Almost there, thought Shikamaru. Huff shadow possession jutsu complete, said Shikamaru, grinning slightly. How? Asked Tamari in shock. Here, I'll show you, replied Shikamaru, as he turned his head behind him and up to the right, which caused Tamari to do the same. Tamari's eyes widened as she saw the kunai Shikamaru threw at the start of their match was creating a shadow behind her, with his jacket being suspended near it. I used those 5 minutes behind the tree to set this all up. The kunai angled the shadow of the sun near you, but I needed a bit more time to be in position. I then threw my jacket attached to a kunai up in the air to create another shadow. Once the two connected, I was able to split my shadow off from the mainstream and attach it to the shadow they created together, enabling me to catch you from behind, and now you're trapped by my shadow right near the wall. Normally this would be the point I forfeit, but my teammate worked hard for this opportunity to be in the finals, and I don't want to waste this chance when he tried so hard to get here, explained Shikamaru. Not to mention there is also a really troublesome blonde up there who would give me hell if I forfeited. It seems all blondes I meet are troublesome, this chick, Naruto, but then again, Naruto is more manageable to deal with ever since he graduated. It must just be the women, yep, that must be it, troublesome blonde women, thought Shikamaru. Line break. Elsewhere, a certain gambling Sanin sneezed. Line break. So now you can give up or I will smash your head against the wall, your choice, said Shikamaru. Sigh, beaten by a lazy genin, I'll never live this down. Proctor, I forfeit, said Tamari. Genma almost smiled but refrained himself before announcing the results to the crowd. Tamari has surrendered, therefore the winner of this match is Shikamaru, said Genma. Shikamaru released his shadow and the crowd clapped happily. As they walked back up, Tamari looked at Shikamaru. You know, one day I'll get you back for this, Tamari declared calmly. Shikamaru just shook his head before mumbling, darn troublesome blonde women. Line break. Will the participants in the next match please come down? Requested Genma. Tenten walked down and so did Sakura. Fifth match, Tenten vs Sakura Haruno, begin, announced Genma. Tenten pulled out 6 kunai and Sakura pulled out 5 shuriken. Sakura threw the shuriken and Tenten threw all of her kunai except one. Sakura then started running at Tenten, but Tenten threw out her kunai, stopping her in her tracks. Sakura then made 4 clones in an attempt to confuse Tenten, but Tenten just threw a weapon at all of them, revealing the real Sakura, who got hit in the arm. Sigh, this really isn't what I expected. I thought you would be much better than this. Although normally I would say it's due to the fact that you're a rookie, there are also 4 other rookies who aren't anywhere near as pitiful. I respect you enough for trying, but really, give up now and save some face, said Tenten. Sakura didn't know what to do. She had been outclassed from the very beginning and it didn't even look as though Tenten was serious. She's right. I can't do anything. I have hardly any jutsu outside the basic academy jutsu and my taijutsu isn't enough to beat her, but then again, I can't even reach her to try. Sakura thought helplessly. Well, I still have a few moves I can use, but thanks for your concern, said Sakura before making a hand sign and calling, demonic illusion, death mirage jutsu. To Tenten, it appeared that Sakura had vanished in a swirl of leaves. Tenten looked around but couldn't much to her annoyance, until a loud voice grabbed her attention. Lee, let your flames of youth explode and run into the sunset, said a familiar voice, prompting Tenten to turn around and see a sunset, with Lee and Guy hugging and crying. No, not this, again, thought Tenten, beginning to panic. Luckily Tenten knew what would happen next, so she shut her eyes and quickly stopped and flared her chakra. That was so uncool, said Tenten in annoyance as she clenched her fists, turning around to face Sakura, who was attempting to sneak up behind her holding a kunai at the ready. To force me to relive what I already had to endure for a whole month. You'll pay for that, said Tenten angrily. Tenten pulled out a scroll and begun summoning weapons at an alarmingly fast pace. Sakura used the substitution jutsu about 6 times, but couldn't use it anymore after that due to running out of chakra, and so she ended up with 12 kunai lodged in her arms and legs before collapsing. Genma walked over to Sakura and saw she was still conscious, but in too much pain to continue as well as being depleted of all her chakra. Sakura is unable to continue, therefore the winner of the 4th match is Tenten, announced Genma. Tenten came back to her senses and went to help Sakura up, surprising Sakura. Why did you help me up? Asked Sakura. Well, aside from the horror you just put me through, you did try your best and that's nothing to feel bad about, replied Tenten. If you don't mind me asking, what did you see? Asked Sakura curiously. Tenten blinked before replying, Lee and Guy's sunset genjutsu. Sakura blinked before shivering. Sorry about that. That move even creeps me out, said Sakura mortified. Line break. As Sakura and Tenten left, Tenten to go upstairs and Sakura with the medics, a swirl of leaves appeared in the center of the ring. In the swirl appeared Sasuke and Kakashi. Hi, we aren't late, are we? Asked Kakashi. No, you're just in time, said Genma. Will Shino Aburame please come down so we can begin the 6th match? Requested Genma. Shino complied and walked down, while Kakashi walked up to find out how the matches went. Kakashi wasn't too surprised to hear Sakura lost, but was significantly surprised that Naruto had won and even more so at hearing how he had won. He didn't even have to use the 9-tailed fox's chakra. I wonder what he did in this last month. Not to mention to hear that he managed to learn the Rasengan in a month is ridiculous. It took me almost half a year and even Jiraiya needed 3 months, thought Kakashi, before turning his attention to the stadium floor. Gaara quickly released the cork from his gourd and let the sand pool at his feet. Naruto pulled out 4 shuriken and threw them in Gaara's direction, before making hand signs and enhancing his shuriken. Wind style. Gale palm, said Naruto, as he gathered his chakra. The shuriken were sped up by the gust of wind that was formed when Naruto clapped his hands together, speeding them up to a deadly velocity. Gaara stood there impassively as his shield of sand rose to protect him, but slightly furrowed his brows when they slammed into the wall of sand and nearly broke through. It seems as though you are quite capable, Uzumaki, so it seems I may have to actively try to win here, said Gaara in the same tone of voice, before raising his left hand and in doing so, directed his sand at Naruto. Naruto leapt back and started running away from the sand. Naruto quickly created a clone which he then had throw him away from the advancing sand. Fire style. Grand Fireball Jutsu, shouted Naruto after finishing his hand signs and turning to face Gaara. Gaara's sand rose to protect him, but the sand which was hit turned to glass. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this, before a plan started to develop. Hey Kurama, do you think using the 9-tailed fox fire stream would get through the sand shield of his? Thought Naruto. Well, it might work, but you haven't used it often and it may take a lot out of you. I'd suggest holding off on using it for now, said Kurama. Fine, I'll see if my sword can get through first, thought Naruto, before drawing his blade and going into his tailless form, causing his pupils to turn into red slits. Naruto channeled Kurama's chakra into the blade and lunged at Gaara. The sand rose to protect him but wasn't able to stop the blade going through it, and as such, Naruto was able to slash Gaara's clothing, but wasn't able to draw blood. Gaara's eyes widened before he started to smile madly. Ha, Uzumaki, you came so close, but I won't be giving you that chance again, said Gaara before flaring his sand outwards in all directions, causing Naruto to jump back. Gaara surrounding himself in his shield of sand and activated his third eye. Naruto looked on before throwing some kunai at the sphere. Instead of waiting for the blades to come close, the sand shot out in spears and went straight for the kunai and beat them back. Now, thought Naruto. Very well, but only go to the first tail, said Kurama after some thought. Naruto nodded even though no one knew why and got down on all fours, before allowing the first tail to appear. Line break. The sand ninja in the stands widened their eyes when they saw this. Kankuro, what are we going to do? We were never told that the leaf had a Jinchuriki, whispered Tamari. I don't know either, and Gaara wasn't supposed to try and turn into the Shukaku yet either. I guess we just wait for the signal and go on as if nothing has changed, suggested Kankuro. Line break. Gaara, I know you can see me, so I hope you're ready for this nine-tailed fox fire stream, shouted Naruto, before unleashing a stream of superheated fire, which slowly started to turn the sand into glass, before shattering it. Hey Kurama, is it just me, or is this thing stronger than before? Asked Naruto in his mind, carefully keeping his eyes focused on the smoking and crumbling sphere of sand. It has gotten stronger because you have gotten stronger, it's not that hard to figure out, said the Kyuubi with a monotone, while he blinked at Naruto's stupidity. Geez, I was just asking, retorted Naruto. Ah, it burns, cried Gaara inside his shield of sand. Naruto then cut off the chakra flow to his throat and mouth and looked at the damage he had done. More than half of the sand had now been turned to glass, with the majority of it shattered and littering the ground. As the smoke faded, it showed an injured Gaara, with first-degree burns around most of his body where his clothing had burned off, and second-degree burns covering his legs and arms. Ah, the pain. What is this? Asked Gaara frantically. Line break. Up in the cage box, the cage turned and looked to the Hokage. Now, said the cage, prompting his bodyguards to cause an explosion. Line break. In the stands of the arena, feathers appeared around everyone and caused all civilians and most of the unsuspecting ninja to fall asleep, barring the Junin, as well as Sasuke, who had activated his Sharingan and saw it was a genjutsu. Line break. What's going on? Asked Naruto out loud. Kankuro and Tamari dropped down near Gaara and each put an arm over their shoulders, before jumping away. Wait, said Naruto, as he jumped after them, but Baki, the Sand Junin, charged at him, forcing him to dodge and jump back. Genma then jumped near Naruto and spat the needle that was in his mouth at Baki, causing him to jump away from Naruto. Uzumaki, the Chunin exams are over. However, I have a mission for you, which is probably only one you can do. You need to go after Gaara and either capture him or ensure his isn't allowed to transform and rampage in our village, said Genma seriously. You got it, said Naruto with a nod before charging after them, while Genma stalled Baki. Line break. Kakashi and Guy were fighting off Sound Ninja, who had been disguised in the stands when Kakashi saw Naruto leave. Kakashi looked around and saw only Sasuke had been able to break the genjutsu. Sasuke, I have a mission for you, said Kakashi, as he threw a kunai at the head of a Sound Ninja, killing him instantly. A mission, now? Asked Sasuke. Yes, the first rank since the Land of Waves, but you'll need a team, said Kakashi as he looked around and saw Tenten and Shikamaru nearby. Go break the genjutsu on Tenten and Shikamaru and come here and I'll give you the fourth member of your team, said Kakashi. Sasuke said, release, before poking Tenten in the shoulder, causing the genjutsu on her to be dispelled, before he turned to Shikamaru, which caused him to blink. Shikamaru, have you been awake this whole time? Asked Sasuke with a deadpan expression. As he said that a small dog came and bit Shikamaru on his ankle. Ow, what was that for? Asked Shikamaru in pain. Huh, what's going on? Asked Tenten, blinking her eyes rapidly as she woke up. At that moment a sound ninja charged at Tenten, but was then punched through the wall by Guy. Guy-sensei, stammered Tenten in surprise. Good, you're all awake. Okay then, let me tell you the situation, said Kakashi, appearing near Guy. Naruto has gone after the sand ninja from the exam. Your mission will be to go back him up and if necessary, fight them as well, as I'm not sure why Naruto went after them, said Kakashi. He probably wanted to finish his match or something stupid like that, scoffed Sasuke. Hey, Naruto isn't stupid, besides, he has more sense than to chase after someone when there is an invasion going on, retorted Tenten. Shikamaru just looked between them and sighed. Either way, go through that hole that Guy created and Pakun will lead you to Naruto as he knows his scent. You got it, Pakun? Asked Kakashi, referring to the small pug that had bit Shikamaru's ankle. Pakun was a small pug with brown fur and a dark brown snout and ears. He had pink-colored paws and wore the standard outfit of Kakashi's ninja dogs, which consisted of a blue vest and a leaf forehead protector, which was worn on the top of his head in a similar style to Sakura. He also had a bandage on his right front leg. Yeah, I got it, no problem, and his scent is pretty easy to find, since he has been fighting for a while, said Pakun, before jumping out of the hole in the wall. Sasuke jumped out after that, followed closely by Tenten. Oh, I just know this is going to be troublesome, sigh, whined Shikamaru, before jumping after them. Kakashi, you know I've taken out 21 ninja already, begun Guy, before Kakashi threw a kunai past him, hitting a sound ninja in the heart. Well, that makes 23 for me, said Kakashi, giving his eye smile. I must win this challenge, Kakashi, and it will then be 51 wins to me and 50 to you. If I cannot defeat you, I will do 1,000 laps around the village on my hands, declared Guy, with flames in his eyes. Line break. Naruto was steadily catching up to Gaara, but then all of a sudden Kankuro broke off from them and turned to face Naruto. You won't be getting past me, said Kankuro. Oh yeah, said Naruto, as he made his signature hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu, said Naruto, causing 20 more of him to appear. Deal with him, Naruto commanded his clones, and they all gave a slight nod before Naruto threw one of his three-pronged kunai a good 500 meters into the distance and vanished in an orange blur. Damn it. Sorry Tamari, I couldn't hold him back, thought Kankuro, before bringing Crow out, now newly repaired. Kankuro planned to destroy the Naruto clones as quickly as he could, so he could go back and help Tamari, but the puppeteer quickly found out that was easier said than done, as he was met with a constant onslaught of blondes with swords. Line break. Shikamaru, Pakun, Tenten, and Sasuke were all leaping through the trees following Pakun to get to Naruto when all of a sudden, however, Pakun stopped and raised his paw. He took a few sniffs before leaping off again, prompting the genin to follow him once again. It appears as though we are being followed by about 9 enemy ninja, and it seems as though they are catching up fast, said Pakun. Well, if that's the case, it seems that one of us is going to have to be a decoy, said Shikamaru. However, for one person to go up against 9 enemy ninja, well, let's just say the odds aren't in that person's favor for surviving, continued Shikamaru. Also, we can't afford to lose Pakun because he is the one leading us to Naruto, which is our mission. This means that it will have to be one of us three that has to be the decoy. Unfortunately, all we have are a weapon-happy kunoichi, said Shikamaru, prompting Tenten to glare at him. An Uchiha who, despite his skill, always manages to get in over his head due to being arrogant, said Shikamaru, causing Sasuke to also glare at Shikamaru. Lastly, there's me, a lazy cloud-watching bum who would much rather be asleep right now than doing anything, said Shikamaru bluntly. However, the decoy will most likely die. Finished Shikamaru. Alright, all. Begun Sasuke before Shikamaru cut him off. Sai, it has to be me. Sasuke, your fire power will be needed in case Naruto needs help, and Tenten, you're primarily mid to long range support, which means if you can't keep them at a distance, you won't last long. Besides, Shadow Possession Jutsu was primarily designed as a diversionary technique, so if you think about it, I'm the best option for being able to distract them and survive. Said Shikamaru, before he stopped and turned around. Go complete the mission and hopefully everything will work out well in the end. Said Shikamaru. Sasuke and Tenten gave Shikamaru a nod of acknowledgement, before leaping after Pakun. Sai, how do I get myself into these troublesome situations? Wondered Shikamaru, before leaping in the direction of the enemy ninja pursuing them. Line break. Ha! I caught up to you. Announced Naruto, arriving on a tree 2 meters behind Gaara and Temari. Well, that's too bad for you. Begun Temari, before Gaara lashed out and hit Temari, sending her into a tree, causing her great pain, but not enough to knock her out. Uzumaki, what are you doing here? Have you come to prove my existence? Asked Gaara. No, Gaara, I can't let you go, not until I help you get out of the darkness that I came very close to falling into. Said Naruto softly. You are a fool, Uzumaki. I already told you that fighting for others won't help you win, it will simply bring about your destruction. Said Gaara, beginning to channel Shukaku's power. Mark my words, Gaara, I will show you that fighting to protect others is the way to win. Said Naruto, beginning to go to his first tailed form. Line break. Okay, we are getting close, but there is some serious demonic energy building up ahead. Said Pakun before taking another sniff and giving it small frown. Also, it appears we are still being followed. Said Pakun, surprising Tenten and causing Sasuke to frown. That lazy bum better not have run away to go sleep or something, or he is going to get it later. Said Sasuke. Line break. 8 sound ninja dropped down into a clearing. The leader walked forward and saw the tracks vanish. All of a sudden, the collection of ninja were stuck frozen in place. Shadow Possession Jutsu complete. Said Shikamaru. Wait a minute, I only count 8, where is the 9th ninja? Thought Shikamaru. The leader looked ever so slightly to a tree about 5 meters from Shikamaru, which caused Shikamaru to realize where the other ninja was. I see. You have one ninja stay behind the others to assist if you get ambushed. Very clever, but there is a reason why you should always be mindful of your surroundings and actions in a battle. You might wonder what I am talking about, and that is because when you looked up into the tree a second ago, you unknowingly gave me their location, and thanks to that, I caught them as well while I was talking. Said Shikamaru. I have never been so happy I wasn't lazy. To think that if I drew out my battle in the Chunin exams, I wouldn't have had enough chakra to pull this off. Thought Shikamaru mentally, amused that not being lazy may have saved his life. Just then, the 9th ninja fell out of the tree. What? Wondered both Shikamaru and the sound ninja. Asuma then dropped down behind Shikamaru. Asuma. Said Shikamaru. Nice work, Shikamaru, I guess you're finally overcoming some of that laziness of yours. Said Asuma. Asuma held his trench knives and charged at the leader and nailed him with a punch to the face, knocking him out cold on impact. He then proceeded to kick another ninja into a tree, who splintered the tree with his body, his tortured form curling around it in pain as his eyes went white before he passed out. In Shikamaru's shock, he accidentally let go of the remaining sound ninja. 2 of the sound ninja realized they were free and quickly threw kunai at Asuma, but he just used the substitution jutsu, their kunai harmlessly impaling a log. Asuma then dropped down and slammed both of their heads down into the ground and then slammed both his arms into 2 more of them who charged at him, sending them crashing into a pair of trees which fell over from the strength of the attack. Asuma then blocked a kunai thrown at him with his trench knives and rushed at the ninja who threw it, before he grabbed his arm and slammed his knee into the sound ninja's back, eliciting a loud groan of pain. Asuma then quickly threw that ninja at the last one remaining, sending them both together into a heap right into a tree, before he rushed them and slammed an elbow into the mass of humanity, causing one to pass out from pain, before punching the other one in the jaw, knocking them out. Rest now, Shikamaru, you did good, said Asuma. Shikamaru just yawned and laid back. Naruto charged at Gaara and swiped his now densely chakra-encased claw-like hands across Gaara's left shoulder, the red bubbling chakra slicing through the sand like a hot knife through butter, ultimately causing the entire arm to fall off. It fell to the tree with a loud thud before Gaara screamed, taking a moment to process the pain from the corrosive chakra. Arg, Uzumaki, yelled Gaara in pain, before another demonic-looking sand arm grew from his shoulder stump. You will pay for threatening my friends' lives. I will bring you down here, shouted Naruto in a deeply demonic tone. That's why you're fighting, I already told you, fight only for yourself, or you will die. I fight to prove my existence as my own village tried to erase it. That is why I won't lose to you, shouted Gaara as he extended his now regrown sand arm at Naruto, causing him to jump to the side and stick to another tree, while the one he had been on before was smashed into pieces. Gaara growled and the sand covering him spread, snaking across his arm over his torso and head until reaching his other arm before moving down. Now Gaara was completely covered in sand and had a tail of his own made of sand. Sand Shuriken, shouted Gaara in a voice now almost as demonic sounding as Naruto's, before 50 shuriken made of sand flew at Naruto. 3 shuriken clipped trees on their way to Naruto, quickly and cleanly severing the branches they struck before continuing on. Tailed beast sonic roar, thought Naruto before opening his mouth and roaring, blasting chakra outwards in all directions, which destroyed the trees nearby and deflected Gaara's sand shuriken. Gaara growled before lunging at Naruto and slamming his now 2-meter-long tail down where Naruto was standing. Naruto saw Gaara charging, and his eyes widened as his size did nothing to slow him down. Just before Gaara hit Naruto thought, Naruto quickly rolled to the side on all fours, falling when the branch was smashed. While Naruto was in free fall, he used this moment to begin forming his Rasengan, which began to turn red from the fox's chakra and then settled on purple after mixing with the blue of his normal chakra. Rasengan, shouted Naruto, bouncing of a nearby tree with a burst of chakra, as he jumped up and hit Gaara's tail, ripping it in half. Gaara once again cried out in pain, but had the presence of mind to jump away from Naruto, lest he provide him with another looked on with an almost curious, thoughtful expression, before settling into one of insanity, before he began to grow to huge proportions, becoming easily larger than the cage tower. Naruto used chakra to launch himself up to the top of a tree, before leaping up to nail Gaara in the face with a punch, but, ignoring the punch completely, Gaara breathed in deeply, with 20 or so mouths appearing on his body before shouting, wind style, infinite sandstorm devastation. At which point all the mouths opened up and unleashed a chakra-coated sand cloud. Naruto was blown back, but the damage he took was almost instantly healed by the fox. Naruto then began to form 2 Rasengan in his hands, assisted by the chakra shroud around him. He then used one of his tails to pull out a 3-pronged kunai, which he threw behind Gaara. Naruto vanished and appeared behind Gaara, catching the sand demon off guard. Double Demon Rasengan Tornado, shouted Naruto, before slamming his hands together, causing both of the purple Rasengan to merge and go unstable, before erupting in a purple cyclone which started from his hands and quickly spread outward, drilling right through Gaara's tail and even burst through his stomach. Gaara gave a blood-curdling scream of agony, but it slowly stopped as sand eventually filled out his abdominal wound and his tail began to grow back, prompting Naruto to jump away. Uzumaki, you will die here, growled Gaara in his full Shukaku form, before he appeared to rise up out of the mass of sand, like a pimple on the head of the Shukaku-like structure. Play possum jutsu, said Gaara in his normal voice atop the structure, before he fell asleep and his form slumped forward, with his legs still attached to the structure. The eyes of the Shukaku structure turned a darker yellow and the diamond in the center shrunk, while the 4 blue dots in between each point of the diamond doubled in size. Yee-haw, I'm free baby. I hope you're ready to die. Let's do this, said Shukaku, with his voice growing deeper each second. Even though Naruto was in a rage and in his three-tailed form, he realized that chances of him beating a demon all on his own were pretty slim. Fox, what should I do? Thought Naruto, trying his hardest to withstand the murderous thoughts whirling in the back of his head. Well, if you can somehow wake Gaara up, Shukaku would be sent back into Gaara's mind, said Kurama. Fine, finished Naruto. Naruto began to charge at the Shukaku while flinging dozens of kunai and shuriken. He then rapidly made hand signs and shouted, wind style, gale palm. The shuriken and kunai traveled at an extremely fast pace towards Shukaku's face, but Shukaku was unfazed and merely breathed in before slamming its hand on its stomach, expelling 4 concentrated balls of air at the weapons and the one who had thrown them. Wind style. Air bullet, shouted the Shukaku, as the deadly balls of wind rushed his opponent. Naruto just had one thought when those bullets approached his thrown projectiles, ah shit. There was a massive explosion when the bullets made contact with the weapons, forming a blast so big almost every tree within a 500-meter radius were sent flying, reduced to matchsticks. Naruto was also blown away, but not by much, as he used chakra to stick to whatever he could while he was in the air. Once the dust had settled down, Naruto came up with a new idea to combat Shukaku. Naruto got down on all fours and gathered chakra into his mouth, as his neck and mouth started to bulge. Nine-tailed fox fire stream, shouted Naruto, unleashing a stream of fire 3 times the size of the one he used in the exam stadium and measuring 3 meters in diameter. The stream burnt through all the trees still left standing, and while Shukaku managed to avoid getting hit in the head, his size worked against him as he wasn't fast enough to avoid it entirely, and it plowed into Shukaku's right shoulder, causing his right arm to fall off. Darn you, shouted Shukaku. Now is my chance while he is recovering his arm, thought Naruto, before making a hand sign. Multi-shadow clone jutsu, said Naruto, causing 999 shadow clones to appear. As if by command, all the clones leapt and threw a series of kicks, hitting Shukaku in the stomach and propelling him up slightly while shouting, Naruto, with each kick. They all then gave the Shukaku a punch with both of their hands before the real Naruto used a chakra-enhanced jump and leapt above them all. The real Naruto then extended both of his arms and shouted, nice meeting you, Shukaku, now it's time for you to go back to sleep. Naruto began to plummet to the area on Shukaku directly over Gaara and smashed into him while shouting, Naruto 2K Uzumaki Barrage. No. Curse you. I don't want to go back, no. Shouted the Shukaku. Moments before his eyes reverted to pure yellow, shortly after which all the sand begun to fall off and break apart. Naruto dropped to the ground and reeled from the feedback he got from his clones dispelling all at once, while Gaara fell to the ground. Once Naruto had recovered, he looked towards Gaara, who had abject fear etched all over his face. He began to walk over to him while Gaara pitifully attempted to crawl backwards. No, you will not end my existence, cried Gaara, panic and fear lacing all of his words. It hurts, Gaara, the pain of loneliness, said Naruto as he deactivated his 3-tailed cloak and kept walking towards Gaara, with tears falling down his face. That unbearable feeling of being all alone, I know that feeling. I have been there for almost my entire life, that dark and lonely place, said Naruto, who was now crouching next to Gaara. But then I made friends, and they helped me out of that darkness, and it is for that reason I will always be there for them. I will fight for them, kill for them, and more importantly, die for them, said Naruto softly, but with steel in his tone. Gaara stared at him and asked him what he couldn't understand about Naruto's motivation. But why? Why are you willing to go to such lengths for them and not for yourself? Asked Gaara in confusion. Naruto looked up at the clear sky above them for a minute before putting his response together. It's because they saved me from myself and the darkness. They accepted me for who I am. They're my friends, explained Naruto. Gaara remembered what his uncle Yashimaru told him, about how love is the heart's desire to protect someone close to one's heart. Love, is that why he is so strong? Asked Gaara quietly to himself. Naruto overheard him and replied with a smile, yes Gaara, it's love. At that moment Temari, along with Kankuro, dropped down near Naruto and Gaara, with Kankuro looking worse for wear after his battle with Naruto's clones, while Temari looked relatively unharmed. Temari went to reach for her fan, but Gaara's voice stopped her. Temari, that's enough, it's over, said Gaara. Gaara, before you leave, I would like to ask you one thing, said Naruto. Gaara nodded his head slightly as if to say, speak. Want to be friends? Asked Naruto smiling, as he extended his hand to Gaara. Temari and Kankuro's eyes widened at this, while Gaara simply remembered how throughout the entire time he talked with Naruto, he only wanted to help him. As he did not have the strength to lift his own arm, Gaara used his sand to lift his hand and arm, in order to meet Naruto's outstretched hand. Friends. Gaara replied once his hand was in Naruto's, nodding his head slightly. Naruto then picked up Gaara and handed him to Temari. Well, I'll leave you with your siblings for now, but Gaara, should you ever want a rematch I'd be happy to oblige, but for now I need to go check on my friends, said Naruto cheerfully as he walked away. Gaara gave a small barely noticeable smile before he mumbled, I'll keep that in mind. Which caused Naruto, who had heard this, to grin, while Temari and Kankuro looked flabbergasted. Temari transferred Gaara to Kankuro, before they begun to leap away. Temari. Kankuro. I'm sorry, said Gaara, stunning both of his siblings. It took a while, but Kankuro eventually replied, it's okay Gaara. Before they kept leaping away. Naruto was at Ichiraku Ramen eating his 5th bowl of ramen for the morning, while thinking over everything that had happened during the Chunin exams, in particular, about Gaara and his Jinchuriki status. I wonder, if I told my friends that I housed the Kyuubi, would they be afraid of me, or see me for what I am? Thought Naruto, as he mechanically ate his meal. Ayame noticed Naruto was eating without his regular gusto and decided to mention something. Naruto, what's wrong, you're not eating like you normally do? Asked Ayame. It took Naruto a while to respond, as he was still deep in thought. Oh, I was just thinking about some stuff, replied Naruto quietly. Hey Ayame, if I told you I had a really big secret, one that might change the way you thought about me. Naruto paused before continuing. Well, do you think you would still see me as myself? Asked Naruto. Unknown to Naruto, Ayame already knew that Naruto housed the fox, but never told him, so it was rather easy for her to reply. Well, if I was really your friend, of course I would still see you as yourself silly, replied Ayame with a smile. Thanks Ayame, said Naruto happily, before he began to dig into his ramen like normal. As he got to his 8th bowl, he heard someone else enter and sit next to him. Hey brat, said Jiraiya. What's up pervy sage? Replied Naruto, much to Jiraiya's chagrin and Ayame's amusement. Didn't I tell you to stop calling me that? Growled Jiraiya, trying to save face. Yeah, but I won't until you stop doing your research, replied Naruto, making air quotations as he said research. I will never, declared Jiraiya, before getting back to what he wanted to say. Anyway, are you up for a mission brat? Asked Jiraiya, already knowing the answer. Sure, said Naruto, before becoming pensive again. What's wrong kid? Asked Jiraiya. Oh, nothing, I'm just thinking about things, said Naruto, apprehensive again. After a while Naruto spoke up again, momentarily pausing in his eating. So what's this mission? Asked Naruto, mildly curious. You and I are going to track down my old teammate, Tsunade, said Jiraiya. What? That's it? No thanks then, I need to get stronger, said Naruto. What can I offer him? Darn, I should have held out on the Rasengan, thought Jiraiya. Well, I could teach you Fuinjutsu, You know the thing that the fourth used to beat the fox," whispered Jiraiya. At this, Naruto shot up like a bullet, his back going ramrod straight. "You can teach me that?" asked Naruto with stars in his eyes. "Of course, after all, I was his teacher," said Jiraiya, puffing out his chest a little. "Deal pervy sage," said Naruto, before finishing his ramen and bolting out of the shop, heading home to pack. Well, that was easy, thought Jiraiya, before hearing Tuki chuckle as the man handed a slip of paper to Jiraiya. "Huh, what's this?" asked Jiraiya. "The bill," replied Tuki, before laughing. Jiraiya looked down and his eyes bulged and almost fell out of his sockets. "Naruto oh 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 oh," shouted Jiraiya. "Line break. Later near the gate. Line break." "All right, I'm ready," said Naruto, with a small backpack containing what ramen, ink, and sealing paper he had. "Okay, let's head out then," said Jiraiya, as they begun to walk away, internally thinking of ways to get back at the blonde for sticking him with the ramen bill. Line break. In the village. Line break. Kakashi was standing outside a tea shop after his interest had been grabbed by two men in black cloaks with red clouds. Kakashi had just finished talking to Asuma and Kurenai, who he had been teasing, suggesting they were on a date, which the couple denied. "Hey Kakashi, you said you wanted to see me," said Sasuke, as he walked up to Kakashi's position. The shorter of the men stiffened as he heard this, causing Kakashi to take notice and confirm his suspicion. "Oh yes Sasuke, I have a new technique I wanted to show you, but something has come up at the moment. Don't worry however, we can just do this later. Come to the usual training ground in 3 hours at noon," said Kakashi, before he turned back to look at the men in the tea shop, but noticed they were gone. Asuma and Kurenai disappeared, while Kakashi gave Sasuke a small wave before vanishing with a body fare as well. Line break. Near the outskirts of the village. Line break. Kakashi arrived to find Itachi Uchiha, the person who single-handedly murdered his entire clan in a night, leaving only Sasuke alive, standing behind Kurenai, who was squatting down holding her stomach in pain. At the same time, Kakashi also spotted Kisame Hoshigaki, ex-member of the Seven Swordsmen, and he was slashing at Asuma with his sword, which was partially covered by bandages, with only the tip of the blade free. Kisame made hand signs before calling out his attack. "Water style. Water shark bomb jutsu," said Kisame as his chakra washed over the group. A wave of water rose up and a glob of water was launched at Asuma, but it was blocked by the exact same attack. "Well, I told you guys to deal with them, but I guess you guys needed a little help," said Kakashi as he arrived behind Itachi, while his clone stopped Kisame's attack. Itachi felt a kunai pressed against his chest before saying monotonously, "Shadow clone explosion." Chakra began to build up in the clone, causing Kakashi's eyes to widen, before he quickly grabbed Kurenai and jumped to where his clone was. The real Itachi appeared next to Kisame moments later. "Why are you here?" asked Kakashi. "Oh, just came by to visit, among other things," replied Itachi coolly. "You're here for Naruto, aren't you?" said Kakashi, which caused Itachi to raise an eyebrow. Kakashi seems at ease, that must mean either Naruto isn't in the village, or he believes he can beat me. Most likely the former, thought Itachi. Itachi quickly changed his eyes, turning them into the Mangekyo Sharingan. "Asuma, Kurenai, close your eyes now," commanded Kakashi. "Whatever you do, don't look into his eyes, with them he can create powerful illusions which only the Sharingan can combat," continued Kakashi. "Admirable, Kakashi, trying to protect your fellow Junin, however, you appear to have overestimated your own skills, Tsukuyomi," said Itachi, as he looked into Kakashi's Sharingan eye. Line break. The area seemed to morph and now featured a red moon, which cast a red light throughout the illusion, with a cloudy atmosphere, giving the background a blood-red appearance. Kakashi looked at himself and realized he was now depicted in an inverted gray scale. "This is the world of Tsukuyomi, in here you are at my mercy, and it will remain that way," explained Itachi, who upon finishing his sentence, caused Kakashi to be tied to a three-point crucifix. Itachi then stabbed Kakashi, with his blade going right through him. After this, 5 more Itachi replicas appeared and did this again. "We will be in here for 3 days," said Itachi, as the clones finished stabbing him. The scene reverted to the beginning and Itachi said, "Only 71 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds to go." Line break. Kakashi suddenly collapsed to his knees in the real world, startling his comrades. "Kakashi, what happened? Can we open our eyes?" asked Kurenai in worry. "No," gasped Kakashi, his breathing now ragged and strained. "Why you Akatsuki, you're after Naruto for the N9 tails, aren't you?" asked Kakashi through his ragged breathing. Itachi coolly stared at Kakashi, before responding, "Kakashi, it seems like you will be coming with us. Does this mean I can fight now?" asked Kisame, giving a wide grin and showing all his razor-sharp teeth. "Yes, Kisame," replied Itachi, which prompted Kisame to charge. "You're mine," shouted Kisame, while bringing his blade down on Kakashi's down form. Kakashi's eyes widened, before a green blur appeared in front of him, which kicked Kisame and sent him flying back to Itachi. "Gee guy," gasped Kakashi, while being both confused and thankful at the same time. Kakashi then collapsed face down in the water, his willpower having reached its limit. "Who are you?" growled Kisame. "I'm the Leaf Village's fiercest green beast, Might Guy," said Guy, pointing his thumb at his chest. "Ha, mighty stupid looking guy if you ask me," retorted Kisame. "Don't underestimate him, Kisame," said Itachi. "Kurenai, Asuma, open your eyes, it's okay, just don't look into Itachi's eyes, look at his feet," said Guy. Asuma and Kurenai hesitantly opened their eyes and looked down. "Kurenai, take Kakashi to the hospital. Asuma, you hold them off with me until the Anbu get here," said Guy. Kurenai went to pick up Kakashi and slung his arm over her shoulder, while Asuma walked next to Guy. "All right, things are getting interesting now," said Kisame happily, before Itachi interrupted him. "No, Kisame, we aren't here to start a war. Let's go," said Itachi, before he and Kisame disappeared in a burst of speed. Line break. With Jiraiya and Naruto outside the village. Line break. "Say, pervy sage, who is this woman we're looking for?" asked Naruto curiously. "She is one of my old teammates, a legendary healer and well," started Jiraiya, before he broke out into perverted giggles, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow at him. Jiraiya snickered a little but noticed Naruto's expression warranted an answer. "She has got huge melons," said Jiraiya, while emphasizing what he meant, causing Naruto to sweat drop. "Yeah right, anyone with things that big wouldn't be able to stand," scoffed Naruto. "You'll see, Naruto. Also, she has earned the nickname of the legendary said Jiraiya, who actually knew about her terrible gambling luck, but decided to let Naruto's mind explore the possibilities. I wonder why she got that name, thought Naruto. In Naruto's mind, Kurama chuckled because he had a suspicion that how she got such a nickname was not what Jiraiya was suggesting, but also knew that it was fun to mess with people, especially Naruto, so he stayed quiet. "Well, here we are," said Jiraiya, as they had reached a town only half a day's travel away from Tanzaku town. "Well, what are we going to do now?" asked Naruto. "I think we might as well head out and look around, but first, I will tell you about the 3 prohibitions to all shinobi. They are women, money, and liquor. The only way for you to stay away from these things would be if you give me your money," finished Jiraiya with a grin, while holding out his hand, thinking this could be his payback for the ramen. Naruto's old prankster side kicked in again, which gave him an idea. "Okay, here you go, pervy sage," said Naruto, giving Jiraiya a very fat fox wallet with red fur and one long white-tipped tail. Jiraiya's grin almost split his face, which gave Naruto the opportunity he needed. He discreetly made hand signs behind his back, first making a clone, which he quickly transformed into a wallet identical to the one he gave Jiraiya, and lastly performed a quick substitution with the one Jiraiya was holding, while he distracted him by saying there was a pretty lady walking by, instantly grabbing Jiraiya's attention. Okay Naruto, I'll see you later. Go get a hotel room for us, okay? Said Jiraiya, as he walked off giggling madly. Naruto then made another clone and sent it after Jiraiya, so he could tell him what happened later while he went off to get a hotel room. Line break. In the Leaf Village. Line break. Sasuke was walking towards Kakashi's apartment, wondering where he disappeared to. What could have come up to make Kakashi leave so abruptly like that? Thought Sasuke. He opened the door to his apartment and saw Kakashi staring straight ahead in his bed, with the covers up to his nose and his Sharingan showing, with Kurenai, Guy, and Asuma standing around. What happened to Kakashi and why are all you Junin in his room? Asked Sasuke. Well, you see. Begun Guy, before a Leaf special Junin named Aoba barged in and asked, is it true that Itachi has arrived in the Leaf again and that he's after Naruto? Before he looked around and saw Sasuke with a shocked, almost worried look on his face, before Sasuke ran out of the room. Idiot. Said Kurenai. Line break. Sasuke was running through town and arrived at the ramen stand, frantically looking around for Naruto, but couldn't see him anywhere. Old man, have you seen Naruto? Asked Sasuke urgently. Tsuki took a while to remember, but eventually spoke. Master Jiraiya came by and took him a few hours ago. I think Jiraiya said they were going to head for an outpost town near Tanzaku town, where the two of them were going to be looking for his old teammate. Recalled Tsuki. Sasuke quickly left after hearing that, while Tsuki was disappointed he didn't buy anything. I have to find them. Naruto doesn't know what he is getting into. Itachi will destroy Naruto if he is after him. Sasuke thought in worry. Line break. Naruto, having settled down in his hotel room, began reading a scroll Jiraiya gave him on beginner Fuinjutsu, when he heard a knock on his door. My clone never came back, so it can't be the pervy sage. Thought Naruto. Naruto put his sword back in his sheath, which was a dark crimson in color, and attached it to his back, with the scabbard along his spine. The knocking continued, and Naruto then opened the door, seeing two Sharingan eyes, each with 3 Magatama in each eye. Naruto, you'll be coming with us, said the figure, which was garbed in a black cloak with red clouds, with a facial structure similar to Sasuke's. Well, from what I heard from Sasuke, you don't look to be a mad killer at all. In fact, I hardly sense any emotion from you at all, although you appear to have regret buried deep inside you, said Naruto calmly, while Kisame raised an eyebrow in curiosity, whereas Itachi simply blinked. Well, Naruto, you appear to be more perceptive than we have been led to believe, said Itachi. Itachi, should I cut off a leg to make sure he doesn't try and run for it? Asked Kisame. At that moment, Itachi glanced at Naruto, and Naruto looked into his eyes and saw something hidden deeply. It was pain and suffering. Itachi, were you aware that a certain snake has his eyes set on your brother? Asked Naruto, as he slowly moved his hands near his blade on the off chance that Kisame tried a sneak attack. At this Itachi frowned, but when Naruto continued, he let some emotion show. He has also given him something he calls a gift. Finished Naruto, at which point Itachi's eyes quickly betrayed him and revealed anger, sadness, and a great deal of pain for only a second, but it was enough for Naruto to sense. Shadow Clone Jutsu, said Naruto, as a clone of him popped up next to him and quickly gave Kisame a kick, catching him off guard, as he didn't expect such a wild brash move, which sent him 50 meters through the hotel, as Naruto's clone was also wearing weights. Naruto's clone then threw a 3-pronged kunai and flashed away in a blur of orange. Now Itachi, let's talk about why a supposed mass murderer cares about his little brother who hates him greatly, said Naruto. Itachi stared at him impassively for a while before speaking. Naruto, how far would you go to protect the village? Could you kill for it, die for it, kill your best friend, and even give up everything you held close and dear for it? asked Itachi, his tone not giving away why he would ask such a question. I would do everything I could to protect the village and those I care about in it, as for my best friend. Naruto paused before continuing, I don't think I could kill Sasuke for the village, however, if he tried to destroy it for whatever reason, I would stop him without killing him. Also, I would certainly throw away everything I held dear to me if it meant saving or protecting those who acknowledged me in the first place. Concluded Naruto, surprising Itachi. I too would have made those choices, and in fact I did. Said Itachi, now surprising Naruto. Naruto, look into my eyes. Said Itachi, which Naruto did, before he was then pulled into the Tsukuyomi. Line break. The truth is, Naruto. Began Itachi, who appeared next to Naruto, the pair in grayscale standing in an expansive abyss. That the genocide of my clan was a mission. Said Itachi, which shocked Naruto. What? Asked Naruto in disbelief, before Itachi raised his hand for patience and continued. The Uchiha clan grew angry over time and the makings of a civil war were brewing. My best friend, Shisui Uchiha, had one of his eyes stolen and gave me his other in an attempt to protect the village. In fact, I see most of his ideals and goals in you. His eye was stolen by a man named Danzo Shimura. Naruto, if you ever meet this man, tread carefully, as he is a ruthless war hawk and will kill you immediately if he thought you were a threat to the village. However, I digress. Anyway, relations between the Uchiha clan and the village were deteriorating rapidly, and as such, I was ordered by the council and Danzo to eliminate my own clan. Said Itachi, with a slightly remorseful look. Why couldn't you have used diplomacy? Asked Naruto, who, while not a politician, knew there are peaceful ways to solving problems. They failed. Said Itachi flatly, before continuing, it was rather unfortunate though that Sasuke found me just as I had killed my parents, and being as young and naive as he was, I told him that I killed our clan and family to test my capabilities. Itachi paused and studied Naruto, who seemed to be thinking about something while Itachi spoke. He later activated his Sharingan against me and actually knocked off my forehead protector. I then knocked him out and made him forget about activating it and made it seem like I was a villain and insane, while telling him to hate and despise me, as that would be the only way for him to grow stronger. Finished Itachi. Naruto absorbed this information before coming to a conclusion. Itachi, I am really sorry for all that has happened to you in your life, as you have clearly suffered a great deal just like me. I can also sense as though you are still holding out on information, such as your illness, but I won't dig into that if you don't want to tell me. However, if you continue to push Sasuke down this path, he may go insane and betray the Leaf Village, which I'm sure you don't want. That's why you need to decide what you will do now in order for your sacrifice to have not been in vain. Concluded Naruto as he looked Itachi in the eye, at which point Itachi nodded and ended the Tsukuyomi. Itachi grabbed Sasuke's wrist and slammed it into the wall harshly, negating the Chidori and breaking Sasuke's wrist in the process. Arg! Cried Sasuke in pain, as Itachi tightened his hold. All of a sudden, Naruto burst out laughing and fell to the floor, prompting Kisame, Itachi, and even Sasuke, to stare weirdly at Naruto. Sorry about that, but I think we are going to have company soon. Said Naruto, with barely restrained amusement in his expression. A burst of smoke appeared and Jiraiya appeared with a girl slung over his shoulder, but the odd thing was that he was glaring at Naruto. Darn you brat, you gave me a fake wallet! Shouted Jiraiya angrily. This was too much for Naruto, who then fell to the floor laughing again, holding his stomach. Oh man, I miss pranking people. Gasped Naruto between laughs. Kisame then cleared his throat, drawing their attention back to the serious events that were unfolding before them. Sasuke was now pinned against the wall by Itachi, who was holding him around the neck and pressing him on the wall. Foolish little brother, you can't beat me this way, and now let me show you why Tsukuyomi. Said Itachi. Line break. Sasuke, I'm sorry. Said Itachi, which shocked Sasuke. Sorry. What on earth are you sorry for, you lunatic? shouted Sasuke. I made a grave mistake in not telling you the truth, said Itachi, which confused Sasuke. Huh, replied Sasuke unintelligently. The truth is, I was ordered to kill our clan by the council in Danzo, said Itachi. Sasuke scoffed and said, yeah right. Which caused Itachi to turn and stare fiercely at Sasuke, with his Mangekyo Sharingan spinning. Fine, don't believe what I say, but I will show you the truth, said Itachi, as the scene quickly changed. The first scene depicted Hiruzen assigning Itachi the mission to spy on his clan. The second depicted Shisui giving Itachi his remaining eye after telling him what happened to him and what would happen to the village if action was not taken, as well as Shisui's hopes for the future. The third scene depicted Itachi conversing with a man who wore an orange spiral mask with one hole for his eye, who was expressing his desire to kill the Uchiha clan. The fourth scene depicted Hiruzen's advisors, Homura and Kaharu, along with Danzo, ordering Itachi to kill the clan. The fifth scene depicted Sasuke activating his Sharingan and attacking Itachi, who then knocked him out and shed a tear. Sasuke was flabbergasted and could only croak out, "Why? You didn't know anything about what was happening at that time. Nor did you know anything about the Uchiha clan's foolish ideals, you were just a kid. Plus, it wasn't for your sake alone that I went through with this and let you live. I also thought that one day I should be judged for the crimes I committed, by an Uchiha like you. For that sake, I used the hatred within you and that's why I failed," said Itachi. "I had intended for you to eventually kill me and restore honor to our clan, but your friend, Naruto, disagreed with my methods and plan," finished Itachi, before showing Sasuke everything said between Itachi and Naruto. "Wait, I'm confused, how has Naruto suffered, and what is this illness you have?" asked Sasuke. "The former is Naruto's right to tell, as for the second, I'm afraid that I'm dying, Sasuke. It is slow, but I do not have much time left. One last thing, little brother," said Itachi. Sasuke looked up and Itachi poked him in the forehead like he did previously when they were young. "Forgive me, Sasuke. There may not be another time," said Itachi smiling, before he deactivated the Tsukuyomi. Line break. Sasuke slumped down the wall, his world shattered to pieces. Itachi turned back to Kisame, Naruto, and Jiraiya, sparing a moment to send a meaningful glance at Naruto, while nodding his head ever so slightly, so that Kisame and Jiraiya wouldn't notice, but just enough so Naruto could. "Kisame, we are leaving," said Itachi, before Jiraiya spoke. "I don't think so," said Jiraiya, who quickly made hand signs and slammed his palms onto the ground and shouted, "Ninja art, toad mouth trap." In an instant, a vast part of the previously brick and mortar hotel had turned in a completely different place, now being a large squishy pink area, which was ing everyone in except for Jiraiya. "Huh, what is this?" said Naruto, as he struggled to move his foot. "Don't move, Naruto, the great fire-breathing toad's mouth is sensitive, so don't move," cautioned Jiraiya, before he pressed his hands down deeper, which caused two tendrils of esophageal lining to charge at Kisame and Itachi. Itachi started running away from the tendrils, with Kisame slashing the two tendrils pursuing them, before following his partner. "Ha! You can't escape," said Jiraiya, who sunk his hands in deeper, causing more tendrils to charge. Itachi and Kisame were approaching a window, but the tendrils were gaining on them. Itachi took a moment to focus and then opened his right eye. "Amaterasu!" shouted Itachi, as sinister black flames burnt through the esophageal lining and the window, through which Kisame and Itachi escaped from the Sannin. Line break. "I don't believe it," said Jiraiya, as he looked at the black flames, which continued to burn. "To be able to burn through the fire toad, this is no ordinary fire," commented Jiraiya. Sasuke's body came back out of the esophageal tissue and plopped onto the ground. Jiraiya proceeded to seal up the fire, while Naruto walked over to Sasuke. "Sasuke, are you alright?" asked Naruto in a level tone. Sasuke stared off into space for a while, before answering quietly. "No, Naruto. I don't think I am, said Sasuke. Naruto stayed there, waiting for Sasuke to say something else, but he didn't, which prompted Naruto to speak. Sasuke, believe me, I will find a way to help your brother, said Naruto. Sasuke's neck almost snapped at the speed he raised his head up to look at Naruto and saw only unwavering determination in his eyes. Thanks Naruto, said Sasuke showing a rare smile. Naruto nodded, before Jiraiya walked over. Well Uchiha, this is a surprise, I expected you to be incapacitated after what Itachi put you through, said Jiraiya cheerfully. Sasuke glared at Jiraiya for this comment, as he was in a way bad-mouthing his brother. Actually pervy sage, begun Naruto, before he filled Jiraiya in on what the situation was, with Sasuke also backing him up with what he was told. Stupid Danzo and arrogant Uchihas. Ruining a person's life like that, said Jiraiya angrily, before changing his tone. However, the person we are looking for is a renowned healer and we just may be able to have her cure Itachi if we can find her, said Jiraiya, grabbing both Naruto and Sasuke's attention. Are you sure your teammate can help Itachi, Jiraiya? Said Naruto seriously, which Jiraiya picked up on easily, as he rarely ever called him Jiraiya. I'm all but certain, said Jiraiya, which made both Sasuke and Naruto smile a little. Well then, what are we waiting for pervy sage? Begun Naruto, before he was interrupted by a shout of, dynamic entry, which was followed by a fly kick to Jiraiya's face. The deliverer of the kick, Guy, who had been smiling as he launched the kick, suddenly lost his smile due to his surprise when he realized he had just kicked a Sannin. Line break. After apologizing profusely, Guy left with Sasuke to go back to the Leaf Village, but first gave Naruto a green jumpsuit, similar to the one he and Lee wore. Naruto blanched at it and as Guy walked away, Jiraiya commented on its skin-tight qualities in apparent dismay, at having to see Guy walk off wearing it. Naruto then had a thought on what Guy's team would look like if they all wore the green jumpsuit. His vision of Neji in a green jumpsuit had him twitching, but his idea of Tenten wearing it started to get his blood running, which gave him a slight nosebleed, which caused Jiraiya to stare gobsmacked. No, my godson is a homoole, shouted Jiraiya, who started weeping uncontrollably. Huh, what do you mean godson and I'm not gay? Shouted Naruto angrily. Is that why you got a nosebleed while watching Guy walk away? Accused Jiraiya, stealthily avoiding the godson part. I was imagining someone else in it, a girl I know, said Naruto, stressing the word girl. Thank goodness, breathed Jiraiya. Now what was that about a godson, Jiraiya? Said Naruto menacingly. Jiraiya then caved and told Naruto that he was his godfather and how he was named after a character from one of his books, which led to Naruto feeling violated. I'm named after a character in one of your books, twitched Naruto. Yep, my very first, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi, said Jiraiya, who unknowingly saved himself from a massive punch to the face. Can I read it? Asked Naruto. Jiraiya was at first surprised, but then gave Naruto a copy, calling it a crappy godfather present, as it was his attempt of saying he was sorry for being a crappy godfather. Naruto picked it up and started reading and walking next to Jiraiya in a similar fashion to Kakashi. Line break. Partial time skip to when Jiraiya and Naruto arrived in Tanzaku town. Line break. Elsewhere, a well-endowed pigtailed blonde was in a bar contemplating what she had been offered today by her old teammate, Orochimaru. He had asked her to heal his arms and in exchange, he would reunite her with her loved ones. Tea Sunday, shouted Jiraiya, as entered the bar. Jiraiya, shouted back Tsunade, utterly confused as to what he was even doing here. Finally, I've been looking all over for you, said Jiraiya as he slid into Tsunade's booth, with Naruto following suit, never lifting his eyes from the book. Naruto promptly ignored the conversation between Tsunade and Jiraiya, as he was deeply immersed in his book, but something that was said brought him out of it. Hokage is a fool's job and only an idiot would want to be one, said Tsunade. Jiraiya looked over and saw Naruto had closed his book for the first time since he got it and his head down, causing his bangs to overshadow his eyes, making Jiraiya feel uneasy. "Hey lady, mind repeating what you just said?" asked Naruto, in an eerily quiet and calm tone. Tsunade, as if noticing the boy for the first time, turned to look at him. "The Nine-Tails brat," thought Tsunade, puzzled. "Hey Jiraiya, who is this pipsqueak? He is nothing like your old apprentice," said Tsunade. Naruto stood up, his bangs still overshadowing his eyes, and slammed his fist through the table and left a fist-sized hole when he pulled his hand out of it. "Answer the question, lady," shouted Naruto, as he glared at Tsunade with rage in his eyes. Tsunade remained calm and spoke, "I said the Hokage is a fool's job, and so were all of them, especially Sensei and the fourth." "That's it. Outside, now," demanded Naruto, as he stormed out of the establishment. Tsunade scoffed and followed, as did Jiraiya and Shizune, Tsunade's assistant who was holding Tenten, Tsunade's pet pig. Line break. Outside. Line break. "Hey brat, why are you so touchy about the Hokage anyway?" asked Tsunade. "It's because unlike you, my dream is to become the Hokage, so I can protect all those who are precious to me, as well as the village," said Naruto. Tsunade saw the spirit and dreams of her brother and lover in Naruto and became upset, before it shifted to anger. "Hey, a brat like you will never become Hokage. In fact, I will only need this one finger to beat you into the ground," said Tsunade illy. "Tsunade, a word of warning, don't underestimate him," said Jiraiya seriously. "Hey, Jiraiya, I didn't know you were becoming weak in your old age," replied Tsunade. "Fine, if you're done talking, Grandma, let's do this," said Naruto, as he settled into his stance. Tsunade grew a tick mark at the grandma crack, but was surprised he settled into a stance, as she had pegged him as the charge-in blindly type. "Grr, you brat," growled Tsunade, as she charged at Naruto. She poked Naruto, but he merely vanished into a puff of smoke. "What? When did he make a clone and how can he make shadow clones?" pondered Tsunade. "Hey, you are pathetic, even pervy sage wouldn't have fallen for that. I guess your special transformation doesn't help you retain your skills, Granny," said Naruto, as he jumped down from a building near where Tsunade was before her initial charge. "Now let me show you what a brat can really do," said Naruto, as he formed twin Rasengan. Tsunade was shocked at seeing this brat using two Rasengan and quickly slammed her finger into the ground, splitting it, causing the Naruto to dispel. "Brat, why don't you fight me? Are these clones a way of you showing your cowardice?" mocked Tsunade, but shivered after saying it. Naruto had a three-pronged kunai to the front of her throat. "Actually, it's because you are stupidly underestimating me, which in the real world, would have just got you killed," said Naruto in a dead cold tone, which made Tsunade shiver again. "Also, keep in mind that I only used 3 techniques against you and didn't even have to use my tenant's chakra, so remember, don't you dare badmouth the Hokage in front of me, or next time you will pay," whispered Naruto into her ear, slightly frightening her, even if he was only around 15 years old. Naruto took his kunai off her throat and began to walk back to Jiraiya, when Tsunade spoke. "What was the third technique you used?" asked Tsunade, only remembering 2, namely Rasengan, and Shadow Clone Jutsu. "This," said Naruto as he threw the 3-pronged kunai he was holding near Jiraiya, before he flashed to the very spot in a blur of orange. Tsunade and Shizune were gobsmacked, while Jiraiya merely chuckled. Tsunade began to get annoyed that she was beaten so easily, so she tried to turn things into her favor. "Hey kid," said Tsunade, which caused Naruto to turn his neck a little to look at her. "I heard that the Rasengan is an incomplete jutsu and that you're learning sealing techniques from Jiraiya," said Tsunade, to which Naruto nodded. "Well, how about a bet then? If you can create one original sealing technique and finish the Rasengan by the end of the week, I will come back with you and heal your sensei and friend. Hell, I'll even become Hokage." "Why not? I'll also throw in my necklace. However, if you lose, I get all of the money in Foxy on your belt over there," said Tsunade, pointing to his bulging fox wallet. "Deal, lady," said Naruto, before he threw a three-pronged kunai near a deserted field surrounded by trees and disappeared in the signature orange flash. "Tsunade, that was a terrible bet, but at least now I don't have to worry because you will be coming back to the village for sure," chuckled Jiraiya. "Why is that?" asked Tsunade with narrowed eyes. "Well, he learned Rasengan in 4 days and said he would have it completed 10 days after the Chunin exams. This is day 7, also, he is a natural at the sealing techniques I've showed him so far. After all, it's practically in his blood. So, like I said, you will be coming back for sure," finished Jiraiya before walking back into the bar. Line break. 5 days later. Line break. Naruto had just woken up, having passed out the day before due to the seal he created, as using it the first time unexpectedly drained him of his chakra. Naruto walked back to the hotel he and Jiraiya were supposed to be staying at, but instead of Jiraiya, he saw Shizune passed out on the floor. "Shizune, it's time to wake up," said Naruto, nudging Shizune. Shizune blinked, before shooting up and grabbed Naruto's arms. "What time is it? What day is it?" shouted Shizune frantically. It's Friday morning," said Naruto, quite surprised at Shizune's attitude. "Oh no, we have to hurry," began Shizune, before opening the window and sticking her head out, before quickly pulling it back in to avoid a kunai. "Huff Shizune huff, where is Tsunade?" croaked out an exhausted-looking Jiraiya. Jiraiya then filled Naruto and Shizune in on Tsunade drugging him and Shizune explaining about the deal with Orochimaru. She better decline, or she will wish I had killed her 5 days ago," growled Naruto, with his eyes turning into red slits. Line break. Naruto, Jiraiya and Shizune arrived at the meeting point to see it smashed to pieces. "Good choice, Granny," thought Naruto, who now allowed his eyes to turn blue again. A loud explosion was heard in the distance. "Come on, the fight must be still going on," shouted Jiraiya as he leapt away, with Shizune and Naruto following closely behind. Line break. With Tsunade. Line break. "I previously had the utmost respect for you, with you being a medical ninja like me, but now I can see you are only a shell of what you once were and are now nothing but a weak, defenseless woman. Die," shouted Kabuto, as he aimed a chakra scalpel at Tsunade's neck, but jumped back when a cloud of smoke appeared in front of him. "Well, Kabuto, it looks like my suspicion was correct, you are a spy," said Naruto. "Well, Naruto, I didn't expect to see you here," said Kabuto. "Tell me, were you the one who beat up the old lady back here?" said Naruto, inclining his head back to indicate Tsunade. "Yes," said Kabuto happily. "How dare you? Only I can do that," said Naruto, causing everyone, even Orochimaru, to sweat drop. Okay," said Kabuto clearly confused. "As for you, Orochimaru," shouted Naruto, as his first tail emerged. "You will die," roared Naruto, as a wave of malice washed over the battlefield. The abrupt and intense killing intent and bloodlust Naruto created shocked Tsunade out of her blood-induced fear and caused her to look up. What is going on?" asked Tsunade. "Well, I'm guessing Lord Orochimaru's murder of the third had quite an effect on Naruto. Although I guess that is understandable when one of the only 3 people who cared about you for 13 years of your life dies," said Kabuto as he pushed his glasses up. Line break. "Die," shouted Naruto, as he lunged at Orochimaru with a claw swipe. Orochimaru dodged the straightforward attack and kicked Naruto in the side, pushing him off the snake Orochimaru was standing on. Naruto's anger was rising, and the second tail emerged. "Curse you, Orochimaru," shouted Naruto, as he drew his sword and channeled fire and wind chakra into his sword. Naruto then jumped and aimed his sword above Orochimaru and came down with a downward thrust in an attempt to bisect him, but Orochimaru jumped off the snake, which promptly collapsed when Naruto came down and stabbed it in the head, splitting it in half and partially cooking it. "Rarg, just die," shouted Naruto, as the third tail appeared. Naruto then began to form two Rasengan in his hands, assisted by the chakra shroud around him. He then used one of his tails to pull out a three-pronged kunai which he threw near Orochimaru. Naruto vanished and appeared in front of Orochimaru with murder in his eyes. Double Demon Rasengan Tornado, shouted Naruto, before slamming his hands together, causing both of the purple Rasengan to merge and go unstable, before erupting in a purple cyclone starting from his hands, which quickly spread outward and drilled right through Orochimaru. Naruto then released all of his demonic chakra, thinking he killed Orochimaru. Very impressive, Naruto, but I'm afraid your mindless behavior will get Tsunade killed, said Orochimaru, who emerged from a dust cloud, untouched by Naruto's attack. Naruto then threw 5 kunai and shouted, "Wind style, Gale Palm," which sped up the kunai, which ripped through Orochimaru. "Like I said," said Orochimaru, as he dissolved into mud. "No granny," thought Naruto frantically, as quickly looked around for Tsunade. Line break. Shizune was fighting Kabuto, while Tsunade was healing Jiraiya, helping to get the chakra-restricting drug she gave him the night before out of his system, so he could join in the battle. Orochimaru suddenly appeared behind Tsunade with his kusanagi sticking out of his tongue, which he then swung directly behind Tsunade, in an attempt to behead her. There was a huge spatter of blood a moment later, followed by a scream from Tsunade. Line break. Naruto was bleeding with a deep gash across his chest. "Well, I thought you were going to kill me, however, it seems as though the reverse has happened, wouldn't you say, Naruto?" said Orochimaru mockingly. We'll see. Also, Granny, prepare to pay up on our bet," said Naruto, before he kicked Orochimaru onto a seal array 10 meters in diameter, which his clones had been making ever since the start of the battle. "Sealing Jutsu. Complete chakra nullification seal," said Naruto, as he slammed both his hands with his wrists together, both palms facing downwards, onto the outside of the seal. Orochimaru cried in pain as all feeling left his body, leaving him an immobile shell. "What have you done?" shouted Orochimaru. "I nullified all your chakra, meaning you can't move and will die soon, as you can't use the chakra you need to live, but why drag out the inevitable?" said Naruto, as he formed a Rasengan in his right hand. "Now to win that bet," said Naruto, as he held the Rasengan in his right hand and then took his left hand and rapidly gave it palm thrusts, injecting wind chakra into the Rasengan, which then made 4 small white blade-like protrusions appear around the Rasengan. "Now die," shouted Naruto, as he charged at the immobilized Snake Sanin. "Wind style, Rasengan," shouted Naruto, as he slammed the vibrant ball of death into Orochimaru's navel. Orochimaru cried in pain and was picked up off the ground on impact, before his head and shoulders were sent spinning out of the seal array, while his lower body and torso were being shredded to pieces, with blood flying everywhere. "Gasp, that almost ended me, huff," said Orochimaru, before he opened his mouth, which along with his head and neck, was all that remained of him. Seconds later a completely new Orochimaru emerged from the decapitated head, once again completely unharmed by Naruto's attack, but was panting with the severe strain it put on him to accomplish, having his chakra barely replenished after being nullified. "Kabuto, we're leaving," said Orochimaru. Kabuto promptly disengaged from his battle with Shizune and appeared at Orochimaru's side, before both disappeared in a body fair. "Ah, damn it," said Naruto, before he passed out from blood loss. Line break. Tsunade quickly got up and ran towards Naruto, in order to make sure he was okay. "Oh no, he has lost a lot of blood from that gash. I need to heal him fast," thought Tsunade, who frantically got to work healing Naruto. Lady Tsunade, your hemophobia," stammered Shizune. "Not important now, I am not going to let another die because of this stupid fear," said Tsunade, as she continued healing Naruto. Jiraiya meanwhile had also ambled over and was watching the events unfold. All of a sudden, Naruto slowly lifted his arm and grabbed Tsunade's necklace. "Hey, Tsunade, looks like I won the bet," said Naruto, before he coughed blood. Also, don't worry, I won't die until I become Hokage, you just keep the seat warm for me, said Naruto, as he pulled off her necklace and gripped it tightly, before he lowered his arm again and promptly passed out. Tsunade smiled as she gently took the necklace from his hand and put it around his neck, before she took off his headband and kissed Naruto's forehead. You will be a fine man one day and a fine Hokage, said Tsunade, after which she put his headband back on. Jiraiya was the only one who noticed, but as Tsunade did this, he saw Naruto smile a little. Yep, the brat is going to be a heartbreaker one day, thought Jiraiya. Line break. At the same time after Jiraiya's declaration, women everywhere shivered. Naruto, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune, and Tenten were finally nearing the Leaf Village. So we're almost there. You're not planning on running away now, are you, Tsunade? Teased Jiraiya. She couldn't if she tried, pervy sage, because she knows I would drag her right back, stated Naruto illy. Watch it, brat, I am the Hokage now, which means you have to follow my orders and give me respect, growled Tsunade. Haha, oh Tsunade, that will never happen, he was so respectful to the third that he called him old man, laughed Jiraiya. Tsunade looked disbelievingly at Naruto, but saw he looked very upset. In response, Tsunade punched Jiraiya over the head, which caused him to become lodged into the ground, groaning in pain. Line break. The walk to the gate, after Jiraiya dislodged himself from the ground, was done in complete silence. The guards at the gate were shocked when they saw Tsunade, but nonetheless let them in quickly. I'll see you guys later, said Naruto, before he quickly jumped away. Jiraiya, you need to know when not to speak, growled Tsunade, which caused Jiraiya to cower under her glare. Line break. Naruto walked around for a while before he found himself at the memorial stone. Old man, why did you have to die? Thought Naruto. Come on, Kit, stop brooding. Everyone has to die one day. It is the only and inevitable constant of life. Also, fixating on death won't bring those who died back, rationalized Kurama. Still, it hurts. The cold hard reality that I won't ever see him again, admitted Naruto. Then what should you do? Brood and cry, or get stronger so you never lose anyone again unless there was absolutely no way for them to be saved? Asked Kurama rhetorically. Naruto thought about what Kurama said and realized there was only one correct response. I will get stronger to make sure none of my precious people are harmed again, declared Naruto quietly, before he went to train, never noticing a purple-haired Anbu had been in the nearby trees. Line break. The first thing Tsunade had done once she arrived at the hospital was heal Kakashi, before assessing Lee, and then broke the bad news to Guy about Lee and the chances of him ever being a ninja again. She was walking around the cage tower before a small person charged straight into her bosom. Konohamaru had charged up the stairs and into the tower after hearing that there already was a fifth Hokage, before he slammed into something soft. Wow, it's so soft and warm. It reminds me of my baby blanket, thought Konohamaru, before snapping back into reality. Konohamaru jumped back and pointed at the lady he bumped into. What pipsqueak? Asked Tsunade mockingly. Who are you? Demanded Konohamaru. Before Tsunade could answer, Shizune appeared around the corner. Lady Tsunade, there you are, said Shizune as she walked up to her mentor. What now, Shizune? Whined Tsunade. Now, Lady Tsunade, as the new Hokage, you need to familiarize yourself with the ninja roster, reprimanded Shizune. Wait, you're the new Hokage? Shouted Konohamaru. Yeah, what's it to you, pipsqueak? Asked Tsunade in curiosity. No, it's too soon for a new Hokage. My grandfather was everything to this village, shouted Konohamaru, before he ran past Tsunade and Shizune and found a room to lock himself in. Well, that was weird, commented Tsunade before she walked off with Shizune following. Line break. 3 hours later. Line break. Naruto, you have to come help, shouted Moegi, who found Naruto walking to the cage tower. Moegi wore goggles like Naruto had in his youth. She had orange hair tied up with red elastics, into two very large pigtails. She also had red oval markings on her cheeks. She wore a red tank top over a pink t-shirt layered at the bottom, her pants were gray, and she wore the traditional ninja sandals. Why? What's wrong? Asked Naruto curiously. Konohamaru has locked himself inside the Hokage tower. Said Moegi. Don't worry, leave it to me. Said Naruto. Line break. With Konohamaru. Line break. Konohamaru had set up heaps of traps and barricaded himself into a room in the Hokage tower. My grandfather made this village and without him it's nothing. I won't let anyone forget him. Mumbled Konohamaru. Hey Konohamaru, open up in there. Shouted Naruto. Go away. Shouted Konohamaru. Sigh, I guess if you won't come out, I'll just have to come in. Said Naruto. Just try it. I rigged the whole place with traps, you are not getting in. Said Konohamaru defiantly. Sigh, transform. Said Naruto lazily, as he turned into a tiny white mouse. Mouse Naruto crawled under the gap in the door and warily looked around. He noticed a lot of ninja wire and a few explosive tags. Was he trying to kill himself? Wondered Naruto. Mouse Naruto scurried onto the explosive tag and injected some chakra into it using his white tail. He then jumped onto a wire and unhooked it from where it was tied without breaking it, so all the stuff that would have fallen remained where it was, while the trap was deactivated. Lastly, he jumped onto another wire nearby which had kunai attached to it. He quickly bit the wire, causing all the kunai to fall. Konohamaru was startled by the kunai falling and then by the puff of smoke. Game over, Konohamaru, said Naruto, as he released the transformation. Man, mice have it hard. Thought Naruto. Now Konohamaru, any reason you locked yourself in here? Asked Naruto, as he sat down in front of him. Why? Shouted Konohamaru, but a stern glance from Naruto made him lower his voice. It's because Grandpa is dead and soon everyone will forget all about him. Said Konohamaru sadly. Tell me Konohamaru, do you know who the first, second, and fourth Hokage are? Asked Naruto cryptically. Yeah, but what does that have to do with anything? Asked Konohamaru, confused at the change in topic. Well, if you know who the fourth is who died 15 years ago, and the first and second who died almost a century ago, why would anyone forget the old man? Said Naruto. Konohamaru thought about it and realized that Naruto did have a point and that if the other Hokage were remembered, why wouldn't they remember the third? Okay Naruto, I get it. Sorry for yelling at you by the way. Apologized Konohamaru. It's alright, remember, I knew the old man as well and I know it hurts, but you know he wouldn't want people moping around. If anything, he would want us to train and become stronger and carry on the will of fire. Said Naruto passionately. Wow boss. Alright, I will become the strongest ninja in the village. Proclaimed Konohamaru. Sure. Hey, you know what Konohamaru, meet me at training ground 7 in an hour and I'll teach you a killer move. Said Naruto. Konohamaru nodded and they both got up to leave. As Naruto opened the door, a fist came flying at his face. Naruto barely got his hands up in time, which he reinforced with chakra to prevent him from going straight through the wall and instead, only got slammed into it. Well, I never realized those grandma cracks got to you so bad, Tsunade. Said Naruto, after he pulled himself out of the wall. Tsunade was gobsmacked that Naruto wasn't sent flying from her strength. How did you survive that? Asked Tsunade. Ah, you wound me grandma, didn't I say underestimating me would get you killed one day? Mocked Naruto. Tsunade growled and ran straight at Naruto with her fist raised, before abruptly stopping, grabbing a medical book to her right, and leaving, which shocked Naruto. Damn it, she tricked me, shouted Naruto, which prompted Tsunade, who was still in the hallway and within hearing distance, to laugh. Line break. After Naruto had spent a few minutes starting Konohamaru on the first stage of the Rasengan, he was now going around trying to find the hidden leaf 12, as he decided to tell them that he housed the Kyuubi. Are you sure they will be able to handle it, Kit? Asked Kurama. Well, I have been surprised before by all kinds of people, and these guys are my friends and teammates, so I guess they should be able to handle it. I hope, thought Naruto uncertainly. Line break. Naruto had tracked down all of them and asked them to meet him at Training Ground 7. They all arrived after a while and looked around in confusion at seeing each other but not Naruto, until Naruto dropped down from a tree. Hey guys, thanks for coming. Started Naruto uncertainly. Hey, what are we doing here, Naruto? After you asked me to come to a training ground, I thought you wanted a spar. I guess that isn't the case, said Kiba. Well, yeah, it's not for a spar, said Naruto, which prompted Lee to groan, as he had similar thoughts to Kiba. Okay, but first, before I tell you guys what I want to say, I have something to show you, said Naruto, as he pulled out a kunai and a sealing scroll. What am I holding? Asked Naruto, which caused everyone to stare at him. After a while of confused staring, Lee responded, You are holding a kunai and a scroll. True, now if I do this, said Naruto as he sealed the kunai into the scroll, which he then picked up again. What is it now? It is a scroll with a kunai inside, responded Tenten, unsure of what he was getting at. Has the scroll become the kunai? Asked Naruto. Troublesome, said Shikamaru, as he had an idea of what Naruto was going to tell them. We're not stupid, Naruto, we know it's still just a scroll, replied Ino, getting annoyed. Naruto chuckled to himself and thought, if only the rest of the village realized that. Okay then, now that you all got that, I will move on to why I called you here, said Naruto. Shikamaru yawned and decided to sit down against a tree and close his eyes. Wake up, Shikamaru, shouted Ino. Sigh, troublesome blonde woman, I already know what he is going to say, said Shikamaru, prompting raised eyebrows from the genin and an understanding glance from Naruto. Well, prompted Naruto. You're still Naruto, said Shikamaru, which caused Naruto to smile. Huh, said Sakura, who had no idea what was going on. Neji, do you remember what you saw in the forest? Specifically, when the sound team attacked us? Asked Naruto, ignoring Sakura's unintelligent response. Yes, Uchiha had demonic purple wisps of chakra, while you had demonic red wisps, said Neji. Very astute, replied Naruto, which caused many to gape in disbelief at his using of the word astute. Lastly, do you all know the story of the nine-tailed fox? Asked Naruto. They all nodded, being familiar with the story. Sure, the fourth used a jutsu which he used to kill the nine-tailed fox in exchange for his life, said Choji, which prompted many to nod, but Naruto didn't. Well, not exactly, said Naruto. Huh, responded most of them barring Shikamaru, Sasuke, Neji, and Hinata. Now before I tell you this, you need to know this is an S-class secret, and telling anyone about this is grounds for execution, said Naruto seriously. WYC, can you talk about it then? Stuttered Hinata. Well, it relates directly to me, so I'm allowed to speak about it. So can you all keep a secret? Asked Naruto, getting nods from all. Okay, said Naruto, as he took in a deep breath and exhaled before continuing. The truth is, the fourth couldn't kill the fox, as it is a mass of chakra with no physical form, only will, and as such couldn't be killed. Knowing this, the fourth came up with a jutsu which he knew could keep the fox from destroying the village, but the cost of using the jutsu was his life. Sealing jutsu. Reaper Death Seal, that's what he used to take the spirit of the fox and seal it away. However, he needed a special object to seal the fox into. Being the strongest of the tailed beasts with the greatest amount of chakra, he could only use a newborn baby whose chakra coils were not fully developed. Finished Naruto. All of them, minus Shikamaru and Shino, were confused at why he stopped there. So what does that have to do with you? Asked Kiba. Do any of you know when my birthday is? Asked Naruto. Many of them looked down in shame, not knowing when his birthday was. Sigh, it's October 10th, said Shikamaru with his eyes closed. Once again, Everyone except for Shikamaru and Shino were confused by this. Lastly, when did the fox attack the village? Asked Naruto, as he closed his eyes. October. Begun Sasuke. 10th. Finished Sakura, in a stunned tone of voice. There was a collective silence before Tenten spoke. So? Asked Tenten. Huh, said Naruto as he opened his eyes. So what? Like Shikamaru said, you're still Naruto. Said Tenten. Shino nodded before speaking. You have a similar burden to the Aburame and you have my acceptance if I have yours. Of course, Shino. Said Naruto with a smile. You were cursed with a seal like me and didn't let it define you. You truly are the greater man Naruto. Said Neji. I guess this explains why you are so strong. Said Sasuke. Well actually, the fox doesn't help me with. Begun Naruto, before Sasuke cut him off. No, I meant mentally. You had the worst odds from the very beginning and never let it consume you. You stayed sane and didn't embrace the darkness even though you were thrown into it, instead, you conquered it and became stronger. Explained Sasuke. Thanks Sasuke. Said Naruto with a heartfelt smile. So none of you have a problem with this? Asked Naruto. No Naruto, it would be most unyouthful to blame someone for something they had no control over. Said Lee, who everyone agreed with, despite his mention of youth. Thanks everyone, this means a lot. Said Naruto. All of a sudden there was a massive explosion near the front gate, which was caused by a gigantic purple snake appearing and demolishing the front gate. Orochimaru stood on top of the snake, smirking and had only one thing to say. I hope the leaf is ready to play. Said Orochimaru sadistically.